Today I'm going to be building a backlit sign for my brand Julia Guitars. I'm going to take you through the whole process, from milling the wood, to designing the part in CAD, CNC machining the stock, to assembly and setup. Let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is take my wood and break it down into smaller sections so that I can glue it together. I'm going to cut out two 30-inch sections. Funny thing about this wood, I actually got it for free from a friend. He knows I build guitars, and he got it for free from his neighbor, who I think is a carpenter, is going to build a cabinet out of it or something. But yeah, it's some nice curly maple, as you can see there, and I wonder what his neighbor would think now that I'm building a sign out of it. I'm using my miter saw. It's a sliding miter saw, and it helps me cut these really wide boards. The next step will be taking it to the jointer. I have a small desktop jointer here, and when you get a piece of wood from a lumber yard, usually one side is straight and they rip it on a table saw, but the other side is rough, so you have to pass it through the jointer a couple times to make sure it's nice and square. Then we'll be taking those two pieces and gluing the jointed side together. I use pipe clamps to glue my pieces together. I live in Arizona, it's really dry here, so my pieces naturally get a little bit warped, but it wasn't too much because we can plane a lot of that out later. I'm just taking some glue and putting some glue on the edge. You don't need a lot of glue, just enough to hold it together, but you do want even coverage. And then when you clamp them together, you want to make sure that there's not too much force because you can get a bow in the wood. So I'm just kind of lining them up here, and you can see that little bit of warp, but that's okay. We'll just plane it out later. Then putting one more clamp on the top just to get some more even coverage. And while I was doing this, I did have a visitor that showed up outside my shop. That's my dog. He's kind of elusive, but I think he just wanted to see what I was up to. Well, that's drying. We're going to jump into a program called Fusion 360. You can use any CAD program. I like Fusion 360 because it's parametric. Unfortunately, this program is subscription-based like everything these days, but I just buy it for a month, do a bunch of modeling, and then cancel it for 6 months so that I don't have to pay for it. Parametric CAD means that I can use parameters, relationships, and constraints in order to model things. And it also has this non-destructive timeline where you can go back and edit any of those parameters if you make a mistake later on. First thing you do when you create a model in Fusion 360 is you create a sketch. And so I already have this sketch pulled up here. So this was created for me by a friend who's a graphic artist. And originally he created this as a patch for a hat, but I thought it would look really cool as a sign. What you do to bring in a vector drawing is insert a DXF. So he gave me this as an Illustrator file. I exported the Illustrator vector art as a DXF, and then I imported it into Fusion. I then scaled it up so it was about the size of the sign that I want to use, which in my case I think was around 28 by 16 inches, something like that. Then after I have that sketch, I need to create a part. So in order to create a part, I extruded the outline of this shape into the thickness of the sign that I want to make. And in order to create parts, you basically just take different features from sketches and then perform operations on them to build the part. So in this case, I just did a simple extrude here. Usually for simple parts, you just use extrude for everything, but there are all these other features if you want to make really complicated shapes. The next thing I want to do is inset these letters so that we can read them. So if I move forward, I did another extrude and basically just changed the operation to cut out the original model. So if we click edit feature, we can see how this was configured. The operation is cut. I've set the profiles to all of these letters and the outline here. And then I just hit OK. There are different tabs in Fusion 360. So now we have our model. We're done with the design tab. We can go into manufacture. Manufacture is where we set up the G code in order for our CNC to cut out the shape. The first thing you do in the manufacture tab is create a setup. I've already created one here. You set the stock, which is basically the material that you want to cut your shape out of. I use fixed size here. You can also create a model and then reference the model. But since we're just cutting this out of two boards that are glued together, and it's a rectangle shape, we can use a simple fixed size mode. I set the width and the depth as the width and depth of my stock, and then height as the height of the model. From there, I set my orientation and my stock point, which is basically the point that you index the bit at in order to tell the machine where to start cutting. So in my case, I set it as the corner of my stock, and then it knows where to start cutting the shape out of the stock. Finally, I'll set my model and just hit OK. Once you have that set up, you need to create toolpaths in order to cut out the different parts of your model. So in my case, I have 4 different toolpaths. 2 of them cut out pockets, and then I have 2 that cut out what's called contours. You can create toolpaths by going up to this tab up here. And in our case, we're just doing some simple 2D toolpaths. Contour is cutting the outline of a shape, and then pocket is basically cutting the inside pocket of a shape. So I did 2 pockets for these letters. When you configure these, you can select a tool. In my case, I have a 1/4 inch end mill, which is an upcut bit. I've already set all the spindle speeds, the feed rate, which is basically how fast it cuts across the material, and then the ramp, which is how fast it moves into the cut. I've selected my geometry, which is the pockets here. So I basically just clicked the inside of these letters to tell it where to cut. And then I set up my passes, which is the depth at which it should cut, and the step over, so how far it should cut over the next cut. And for this particular piece, I wanted multiple depths because the pocket is the same size as the bit, and you don't want to cut the entire depth of the bit unless you have a really powerful machine. So I basically said only cut 0.06 inches deep at each pass. And then I just said, okay. And then it generates this toolpath for you. So I did this a couple times. I did one for these big letters, one for the smaller letters with the smaller bit so I can get inside of these. And then I had another one that I just traced the outline or the inside of those letters to get really sharp corners. And then I created one contour for the outside here. And then the last thing I did was actually add tabs in here so that the piece didn't just fly off the table. And then I'll just cut these with a saw later on. Finally, I want to make sure that the thickness of my part is the right thickness before I start milling all these shapes out. So I created a separate setup and added a facing operation. The facing operation will basically just skim the top layer of the piece, and I'll change the offset of the Z each time so that it just skims a small layer until I get to my final thickness, which I think was like about 0.7 inches or something like that. Once I have everything set up, I'll right click on the setup and then just hit post process. And here you can export your G code for your CNC to read. You'll have to make sure you download the correct file type from the provider of your CNC machine. So in my case, I'm using Gerbil, which is for a carbide 3D machine. And then just select your output folder and a file name, and you just hit post. You load this up into your machine and you can start cutting. Now that the glue is dry, we can break the piece out of the clamps and start milling the stock. This is my CNC, it's called a Shapeoko Pro. It's not the cheapest machine, not the most expensive either, but it's really accurate, which is why I like it. Our first operation will be a facing operation. You can see there's some warp in the wood here, but that's okay. We'll get rid of that with that facing operation. And I'm just clamping it down with some clamps here. You want to make sure that this is really tight on the table and doesn't move around. You can ruin your piece if it starts to move when it's machining the piece. I'm changing out the bit to a fly cutter, which is a 1 1/4 inch wide bit. It's really wide so I can get more coverage on that facing operation. And it has replaceable blades on there so that I can keep the blades really sharp. Now we'll index the Z axis, which is basically just telling the machine where the piece is in Z space. I'll offset this about 0.02 inches so that I can cut a tiny bit of material off the top, and I'll do that a couple times until I get to the right thickness. You can see the contour operation happening here. This is with that 1/4 inch end mill. Using the same end mill to cut out the letters. And then I'm using a 1/8 end mill to cut out the smaller letters here. This is what it looks like when it's finished. That fuzz on top is just because we used an upcut bit, but it'll come right out when we start sanding it. This has to be the funnest part of the project, which was painting the inside of the letters. I'm using some acrylic black paint, and you really have to goop this on. I went back a couple times because there's some spots that I missed, but what's nice about the acrylic paint is it doesn't soak into the wood, so that once you're finished, you can just basically sand it all off. I live in Arizona, and Arizona is not known for the rain. Fun fact, it was actually the first time in over 100 years that it rained on June 1st, and I was not prepared for that. I actually left the part outside in the garage and ended up getting a little bit of warp in the wood just from the humidity. There it is. But I turned it over overnight and got rid of some of that warp. But it's not a big deal because this will just be hanging on the wall. But I wish I would have brought it inside so that I didn't have that little bit of warp. Now I'm just sanding it, first with 120 and then 220 to sand out any scratches. I'll break out the part from the stock using a Japanese handsaw to cut those tabs. I actually cut myself with this handsaw a couple years ago. Made me stop making stuff for a while, but yeah, I'm now a lot safer with hand tools, and you live and you learn. This is another piece that I'm milling. It's the back piece, which will hold it onto the wall. I have some little screw holes in the back so that I can hang it off some screws. I'm doing the same steps here, just facing the stock and then cutting out the different features using a 1/4 inch end mill. Now I'm just countersinking some of the holes on the back of that part. I'm using some flathead screws to screw this onto the sign, and I don't want them sticking out the back because it's going to be sitting flush against the wall. I measured up the center of the back of the sign, drilled a couple holes, and then screwed it right in. For the finish on this, I'm using a product called Osmo Poly X. It's a hardening oil which is typically used for floors or furniture. I also use it on guitars, and it has this property where it makes the piece slightly waterproof after you put it on. Not really necessary for this sign, but it is nice for guitars where you're sweating and you're playing them a lot. It also just makes the grain really pop, and I think it looks awesome with this curly maple. You can see some of the curly maple popping through here. This looks really nice. So usually I'll wipe on a pretty thick coat and then wipe off the excess with a dry cloth. I can do 2 coats. I think on this one I only did 1 just because it's such a big piece and I didn't really need it. To make the sign backlit, I'm using these lights that I found on Amazon. They're cheap $20 lights. What's nice about them is they have an adhesive back. There's a remote so you can control them wirelessly, and you can cut them at any length. So I'm just taping them on here, and they're kind of hard to get in curved sections, but it's so small that you can kind of just make it work. And then I'm cutting it to length here. I wasn't expecting how bright these lights would be when I turned them on for the first time. As you can see here, I was a little shocked when I turned them on for the first time, but really excited about how this turned out, and let's see how it looks on the wall. That's it for this video. If you made it this far, consider subscribing. If you want to see me build anything specific, leave a comment down below. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.